Hello everyone, welcome to another Maya 2015 tutorial. This one's going to be the Catapult project. It's the one we have inside of our book, the Maya 2015 Introduction to Maya handbook. This project is going to be a little bit different than our previous project because there's no reference work. And since I'm not going to be pulling up pictures out of the book to work off of, you guys will just have to follow along. We're going to start this project just like we start every project inside of Maya by creating a project window. And it'll create a little project folder. So I'm going to go to new. I'm going to call this one, I'm going to call it Web Catapult. And the reason why I'm calling it Web is just because I have done this multiple times, and I think I have a couple folders of this on my desktop, so I just don't have multiple folders. So go ahead and accept. And now there should be one. Here's Web Catapult. Good. Now I have a texture file I'm also going to include. Let's go ahead and shrink this down. It's this one right here. I'm going to texture my product as I'm going, and I'll explain why as I go along. But this file here, if you're inside my class, you can get this off your Moodle download. It's got two different wood textures and a metal texture. You guys can create this in Photoshop very easily if you guys aren't in my class. It's just essentially a single image with two different wood textures and a metal texture, just like I just said. Okay, so I'm going to open up my project folder here. I'm going to, let's see here, go to the source images folder here. And I'm just going to drag and drop this into the source images. There we go. Okay, so I'm done here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and create my first objects here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create what's going to be kind of like the support beams, like that's going to make up the length of the catapult. So I'm just going to use a polygon cube, create polygon primitives cube. And if you look at my manipulator here, the blue arrow is the Z, the red arrow is the X. So I can tell just by looking at my manipulator that this is the front view and the red arrow is side to side. So I want to move this off the axis just a little bit. I'm going to move it. I'm going to scale it. So I hit R for scale. I'm going to scale it out to where it's about like that. This doesn't have to be perfect. I can always manipulate this later, but roughly that's what I'm going to go for. Alright. Good. Alright, so I'm going to now go to edge mode. I'm going to select the top edges and the bottom edges. I'm not going to select these vertical edges because if I do, they'll just create n-gons, and I'm trying to create as few of those as possible. Alright. So we're ready to do a bevel now. So I have all the edges here selected. I'll go to my bevel tool. So I have bevel on my shelf right here, or if you don't have it on your shelf, you can go to mesh, edit mesh, and underneath edge you'll see bevel right here. I like to use my shelf though, so that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so the initial bevel here, that's a little extreme, so I'm going to go back to my object mode, select my model here, go to my channel box, and select the inputs for bevel. Let's change the fraction from 0.5 to 0.2. Looks a little better. Okay. So let's take a break from this for 1 second. I did forget a couple steps I need to do. I need to go and set my project. I'll go ahead and set project, and this one is called Web Catapult. Let's go ahead and set it there. I'm gonna go ahead and save my scene because sometimes Maya crashes, and if you don't have your scene saved as you're working along, you could find yourself in some hot water real quick. So Catapult scene 1. Save as. Continue. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually attach a new shader to this object here. So I'm going to go to my hypershade. That's the little icon here. And I'm going to create myself a new Lambert. And I'm going to select my beam here. I'm going to right mouse button on my new material and assign it. Okay. I'm going to change the name of this Lambert from Lambert2 to UV map Lambert. Select the Lambert. Go to the attribute editor. Change the tab here. We'll go to the color attribute. Go to File. Go to Folder. And since I put this inside my source images and I set my project, it went right to where the file should be, which is my Catapult in UV JPEG. So that's all my textures look like. So if you guys want to make your own textures, you know, it isn't that difficult. Or you can just use this one if you're in my class. Okay, so this texture is now plugged in here. Obviously there's no texture on my beam yet because I don't have textures turned on inside my viewport. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so now I have textures in my viewport. Excellent. Alright, but they don't look right because I don't have my UVs mapped yet. So I'll select my beam and I'll go to Create UVs, Automatic Mapping. Now, automatic mapping creates this projection for mapping out your UVs. And right now, this auto map is way too big. So they do give you this manipulator. It looks just like the extrude manipulator. And you can scale down the projection to where it fits your model. You don't want it too small, but you also don't want it too big. Okay, that looks more appropriate. Okay, that's good. Let's go to object mode again. Select our beam here. Let's go to channel box and call this one mesh beam R for right side. Okay. Now we can do some texturing. So let's go ahead and jump into our UV texture editor. And I'll use this split panel icon. Got panels, panels, UV texture editor. Okay. Excellent. Now I need to turn on the shaded here so that I can, these islands will come up as blue. Okay, that's looking good. So now I just need to move these islands out of here. So let's go to UVs. Let's get all these out of here. Go to W for translate, and we'll just move them off to the side. Okay. So let's go back to right mouse button on top of this island here. We're going to go to shell. We'll select each one individually, and if you look over here on the side, you can see this as we're working with it. So let's pick a texture. I'm going to go with this dark wood texture over here. I'll just spin this like this, and I'll use my scale tool to fit it inside here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Alright, same deal. I'm just going to bring this other one over here, and yes, it is okay that these overlap. So this kind of texture, UV texturing, is a little bit quick and dirty. I'm not sure if it's very widely used in the industry, but for certain projects like this, where you're just trying to apply some texture very quickly to some objects in your scene, that doesn't require a bunch of extra refined detail, this is a good way to get that texture in there. Also, this optimizes how many texture maps you're using in your scene, so it helps with data size and processing speed. So there's a couple different reasons why we're doing it this way. You could lay out a UV set for each object, but that tends to take up a bunch of file space, and it seems to be a little unnecessary for a project like this. Okay, so let's see what our beam looks like. Okay, that one looks pretty good. Alright, so we got our first beam for our catapult. It's looking pretty good. Alright, let's keep moving on. We're going to now create another beam for the other side. So to do that, we're going to use mirroring through groups. So I'm going to create my first, or I'm going to create a duplicate of our beam here. So I'll hit Control D, I'll hit Control G. So now the pivot point moves to the center here. You see how the manipulator jumped over there. Now when I hit -1 in the scale X, it'll make it to where this beam jumps to the other side, like so. Alright, so we've got our first beam set up on the other side. Now we're going to need some cross panels to create for winch support. So we're going to take this beam here and we're going to duplicate it. So Control D, and we're going to scale it down quite a bit. We'll translate it up, and we're going to rotate it, let's see here, 90 degrees in the Y, I imagine. Okay, and how these sit on here, it can be up to you. You don't have to have them sit right on there flush. You could have them penetrate down, kind of like maybe they had some notches cut into the beam so that these planks would fit in there perfectly nice and neat. So I'm going to leave mine inset a little bit like that. I'll just duplicate one more. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to take both these guys and I'm going to group them. Control G, Control D, and I'm going to center the pivot, and I'm going to rotate them both 90 degrees. Okay, and I will translate them up and translate them back. Okay, so now I got some supports in the back here for my winch. Good. Okay, now I need one support in the front here. This one's going to be big and wide, and this is going to be for the catapult arm. So Control D one more time. I'll bring it to the front here. I'm going to use my scale tool. We'll widen it out. And this one I'm actually going to have it above. I'm going to make sure it isn't hanging over the edges because I'm going to have some brackets that are going to hold some stake supports on the sides. So I don't want those interfering with each other. Okay, maybe a little bit wider. That looks a little better. Okay, so you may have noticed that when I widen this with the scale that now the bevels are a little bit off. So all we have to do there is go to our edge mode, select one edge on one side, select the other edge on the other, activate your scale tool with R, and then with your X scale box here, just move it off to the side just a little bit until it looks a little bit more even. Okay, that's good. Alright, so we're coming along here, doing pretty good. Alright, so next step, we are going to create some screw heads to kind of bolt down these beams to each other. So to do that, we're going to create ourselves a sphere first. Now, in past lessons, I've been trying to stay away from n-gons. In this particular lesson, I'm not going to be able to avoid it because the book wants you to create an n-gon by using Booleans. So I'm just going to go with what the book says and kind of follow its instructions and show you guys how to do that, and just kind of have to deal with it for this particular lesson. I usually try to stay away from creating them on purpose if I can, and I could create this screw head without creating an n-gon, but it would take a little bit or quite a bit longer. So I'm just going to, like I said, go with what the book is teaching. So you'll create yourself a cube, create polygon primitive cube. Now the idea here is with Booleans is that you can use one object to punch through another. There's actually 3 different kinds of Booleans. Each one performs a little bit differently. There's one called intersection. Let's see here. There's intersection, difference, and union. And union obviously combines the 2 objects. Difference is when one object punches through another, which is, and what is left is the difference. Uh, and then there's intersection, which is when two objects are going through each other. Where they intersect is what's left. So we're going to be using difference for this one, but adjust this cube a little bit more. Okay. We want to get it to where it goes down close to, but not past the halfway point, which is right about here. We want to make sure that it's close to centered here. It'll help if I have that on. Okay. That looks pretty close. So I'm going to stick with that. So we'll select the sphere first. Then I'm going to shift select the cube. Then I'm going to go to Mesh, Booleans, Difference. So then you see it just punches right through the top of that sphere, and then it creates this n-gon around the inside. Actually, there's 3 of them. And yeah, that's really problematic if you're planning on bringing this into a game engine. They'd say, hey, that's a big old n-gon right there. You can fix that. But since we're just going with how the book is teaching, we're just going to keep going. So now we have the top of the screw head. We're just going to delete the bottom faces off of this sphere because we don't really need them. Just extra geometry. So just select the bottom half in face mode and hit delete, and now we're good to go. Excuse me. Okay, so you can see that the icon after the Boolean was created pushed the manipulator back to the origin. We're going to go to Modify, Center Pivot. That brings it back over here. Okay, but again, we want to do texture on this. So as we're putting screws on, we don't have to retexture this the screw head every single time. So again, we're going to jump over to our hypershade. And this is another reason why using this one map to texture everything is awesome, because we can use one shader to texture all of our objects. So our hypershade's nice and clean. That probably helps with processing power too. And so right mouse button on here, assign material selection. And it makes it to where all these objects are all sharing one map. So that's great. Helps with processing power, helps with data size. There's a lot of good reasons for that. Okay. Now our screw isn't done, obviously. I'm going to get into position so I can judge what it looks like once it's done as I'm texturing it. Now, since this one is so small, it doesn't really necessarily have to be UV textured or UV edited in a way that it has high resolution detail. I could just stick this into the metal texture and just be happy with it. So that might be what I'm going to do. Let's go ahead and pop into the UV texture editor. So I'm going to select this icon here with the graph editor. So I'll get a split panel and go to Panels, Panel, UV texture editor. Okay. Okay. So the way these are laid out, I'm going to have to actually create some UVs. I could slot them all inside here, but the fact they have these red ones here tells me that there's UVs that are normals that are backwards. So I need to fix those anyways. So I'm going to go to Create UVs, Automatic Mapping. Okay. Now I'm just going to take, or in shell mode, I'll just take each one of these shells, and I'm just going to move them inside the metal texture. Since they are so small, I'm not going to worry about trying to stitch all these together. Overlapping, like I said earlier, is typically fine, since this isn't like a face texture or writing where it matters. This is just wood and metal, so overlapping textures is totally okay. Okay, almost there. Okay, so let's see how we're doing inside here. Okay, Q. Okay, so there is one here that I think I want to fix. Just how this one right here goes. It's kind of being a little bit anal, but since I'm not going to go through and try editing all of it, but this part right here, I'm going to try to move and stitch inside here. So I'll just click move and stitch. Okay, so I'm going to have to fix a little bit of this. Let's go ahead and attack some of that. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing you can go through and edit this a little bit if you want to. Okay, there you go. Now it's seamless. Alright, so let's go ahead and exit out of here. Go to object mode. Alright, so I got my screw head there. That's good. I want to put screw heads along these beams to look like they're all being fastened to each other. But I don't want to deal with the stuff on this side, just this side, because I'm going to use grouping and mirroring to put it over on that side. So I'll select this one here, hit Control D, and just translate it over. And I'll hit Control D again. Now I'm not going to go and mirror everything over like right away. Probably even in this lesson, I'll probably wait till the next one, because I don't want to mirror everything over continuously back and forth, because I'll just create a ton of groups, and it'll be something I'll have to untangle and delete a bunch of history later on, and this doesn't make any sense to do it that way. So what I'm going to do is just wait until most of the stuff that I need on one side is done, and then I'll mirror all of it at the same time over. Okay. I also noticed I messed up on one thing. Let's go ahead and just delete these guys really quick. It's not like I messed up big time, it's just I want to stick with naming some of this stuff. So mesh, screw, and delete the history on this guy. Hit Control D and just push these guys on over. Now as I'm creating them, you can see how it says mesh screw head 1, 2, 3, and just okay. Alright, I'm not going to do this side at all. So like I said, I'm just going to do this side. Okay. Alright, great. So I'm going to go ahead and create the bracket that's going to hold the axles, and it's going to hold the catapult arm and the winch assembly and the stakes that go on the side. So the book has you do it one way. I'm going to show you guys how to do it a more efficient way. So I'm going to start with a cube. Go ahead and hit create polygon primitive cube. I'm just going to go ahead and name it now. Call it mesh bracket. Okay. I'm going to go through and delete the history on some of this stuff just to see if there's anything that needs to be. May not. No. Actually, yep, there you go. Delete history on this one. Just trying to make sure, like, things are not just carrying on a bunch of history for no reason. Okay, so let's go up here and we're going to work on our bracket. Before I do that, though, I'm going to create a layer just to put my geometry on that I'm working on, so I'm not messing with it. I don't have to have it on my screen. So I'm just going to select all of this here. I'm going to create myself a new layer. Let's call that one base mesh. Save. Right mouse button on top of this layer, go to add selected objects. Okay, so now I can toggle off the visibility on this, so I'm not just hogging resources in the viewport. Okay. Alright, so now let's create ourselves a bracket. So activate my scale tool. I'm going to scale this out a little bit. Scale it wide a little. Okay, that's good. So now I'm going to select a face on each side. Okay. Now I'm going to run my extrude tool. Now I'm going to to where as I'm working, it'll do everything symmetrically. So extrude once. And what I'm really doing right here is I'm just trying to create some extra geometry that I can extrude the bracket down on. So now that I have these two side faces now, I can select the bottom face of both sides and run my extrude tool again. And this time I can pull it straight down. Okay. Now I need the same kind of deal I have up here on the corner so I can create the feet. So I'm going to hit G, which will repeat the last command. Be careful now. If you hit G and you don't do anything, you'll have extrusions hiding inside of extrusions. So always be careful with extrude. If you guys extrude and you don't move anything, you can end up breaking your geometry. So, and creating quite a mess to fix later. Alright, so hit G one time. Okay. So now I have some side faces. That makes it to where I can extrude out the feet. So I'll select this side over here. I'll shift select this side. And I'll hit extrude. Okay. Now I have some feet. Okay, great. Now looking at my bracket here, this looks a little narrow. So I'm thinking when I go and fix this, I'll just select the top 3 faces and hit W for translate and just raise them up a little bit so the thickness is a little bit more even. Okay, that's good. Go to object mode. Alright, so my bracket modeling phase is actually done at this point. I just need to texture this, so I'm going to jump back into my hypershade. You guys will get real comfortable doing this because we're going to be doing it to all the components. Right mouse button on top of the shader, go to assign material selection. Okay, so now we are looking good here with, well, it's not looking good. We don't have our UVs laid out yet, but the texture is attached, so we're done with the hypershade. So spacebar on the preview window, and we are going to the outliner, or not the outliner, I'm sorry, the UV texture editor. So we'll click the split panel view right here. Go to panels, panel, UV texture editor. Okay, so now we're in here, and we need to actually create some UVs first before we get this texture right. So we're going to go to create UVs, automatic mapping. And again, it looks like my projection doesn't look quite right, so I'm going to adjust that. Okay. That looks decent. Should up from the top. Okay. Those projection panels all look good. Alright, so now I can go and start assigning where this is going to go. And you guys don't have to assign it to the same spot I am. You guys can pick whatever texture you want. You can make this metal or wood or a different kind of wood or create your own texture for all I care. It doesn't really matter. We're just going to go through and do this like everything else. So you have a shell. And actually, I'm going to select all these guys and let's go to UV actually. I think I can move the shells. There we go. We're just going to move those off to the side. Go shell. Select each one here. Now, if you want to make these brackets this other kind of wood right here. So let's put that over here. And looks like I probably want to have it spun the other way so that it's going with the grain of the wood. Probably the same thing for this. That's the top piece. So let's bring that over here. So I'm going to be rotating all these guys until alright. Just moving and rotating, guys. Okay, let's see what this piece is. It's the underside. That one I'm not super concerned with, because most of the time it's going to be hidden. And these are the feet, so again, hidden. I could technically just delete those since you're almost never going to see them. But we'll just leave them just for the sake of having it completed. Okay. There we go. That was good. If you have a little bit hanging off like this, you can find that particular one. See how it's that one right there? And go to UV mode, just select those top UVs and just push them back in. There we go. Alright, so our bracket is all the way textured, which is great. I'm going to go ahead and save now. Go to File, Save Scene, Continue. I want to bring back my base mesh, and I'm going to get this guy positioned, scale it where it fits in the back here. Looks like I missed one face here. I'm going to have to jump back in and fix that. So let's go ahead and get it positioned first. So what we're going to be dealing with here, this is going to be my winch assembly. So I'm going to have a winch that's going to be going through the middle here, which means I probably want all this stuff here to be a little bit more. I'll fix that later with a group. Okay, so that's positioned good. I want to put a screw on each one of these feet, so I'm going to select this, Control D. I'm just going to put this up over here. Control D again, just translate it over here. I'm going to fix this face really quick before I finish this particular video. Jump back into my UV texture editor, panels, UV texture editor. Alright, let's figure out where this one is. So have it select, oh, there they are, there's two of them. Okay, we'll grab each one, just bring it back over here. Yep, okay. Alright, now it's all textured. Great. Okay. Alright, so this is where we're going to stop for this lesson. Next lesson we'll pick up and we'll create some more brackets, and we'll create a stake for us to secure this catapult, and then we'll start on the wheels too. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.